This is the TJ Hoisington Podcast. Unleash your greatness within.
Hey there, and welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. In today's message, I want to share with you how to master your communication and conversational skills. This is a vital life skill that can determine whether you succeed or not. And I'm going to share with you 6 principles or ideas, strategies that you could use immediately to be more comfortable meeting people you don't know or people you do know. All right, so let's jump right into it.
You already know. My passion and my mission to help you unleash your greatness within. My heart goes out to the underdogs that's on their way. If you think you can go from good to great, okay, let's motivate. GreatnessWithin.com. TJ Hoisington. GreatnessWithin.com. Oh, if you dreaming it, believe in it, work hard for it, and in the process serve others in a positive way. Think you can do it.
Okay, listen, doesn't it make sense that you want to have good communication skills? I think it does. Whether you want to be a leader in your company, whether you want to get that next promotion, being able to communicate with others and have comfortable communication skills will make a difference in your influence around people and even your own personal confidence. All right, so let's jump into the 6 principles. Principle number one is understand that probably 80 to 90% of the people out there feel some level of social anxiety. They just struggle with it. With the onset of smartphones and so forth, I think the quality of communication has gone slightly down. And so for a lot of people, it's just really difficult to strike up a conversation with someone they don't know, or maybe they're meeting someone new and it brings all kinds of feelings and tension and anxiety. I want to show you how you can make it so much easier for yourself. But I would just tell you that many people struggle with this. You're not alone, okay? I remember when I was in the 2nd grade, my teacher said, "Who can spell the word they?" Of course, I was excited. I knew in my mind I could spell the word they. I raised my hand. I can. She called on me. I said, T-H-A-Y. She turned to me and said, "Nope, you're wrong." And I remember being horrified and embarrassed that I got it wrong. In the moment, I didn't know what I got wrong. But I learned later it was T-H-E-Y in the English language. But from that moment on, at a young age, I just adopted the idea I'm not speaking up in school anymore. And for many years, I didn't. There was no way I was going to speak up in school. It wasn't until I was 15 years old and I stumbled on some motivational cassette tapes and so forth, where people were talking about self-image and motivation and confidence and so forth, that I started to adopt a different mindset. I started to adopt a different paradigm, and I started to communicate more openly. And I started as a sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school, I started to communicate with everybody openly. I just made friends of people that I met and just communicated openly and tried to ignore some of those anxiety feelings. I just leaned into it. And ever since, that's basically what I've done. Okay, so number one is just recognize that you're not alone, that most people struggle with some level of anxiety when it comes to social interactions and so forth. Step number 2, or strategy number 2, or understanding number 2, is that everybody's favorite subject is what? Themselves. You know that. Everybody's favorite subject is themselves. So it behooves us to have people talk about themselves. So if you're going to meet someone for the first time, the first thing you want to do is get them talking about themselves. So step number 3 is, how do you get them to start talking about themselves? Is you ask them questions. So step number 3 is you got to be curious. You got to start asking some curious questions. Notice something about them or their circumstances or whatever, and just ask questions. When my kids were young, they thought I knew everybody. You want to know why? Because I'd be, for example, at the gas station, and I'd start talking to the other person at the gas station who was pumping their gas. And I would this is what I mean by being curious. I would say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And they'd say, "Good, how are you doing?" And I say, hey, I love your car. And in fact, I love the color of your car. And they'll say, oh yeah, I had it specially painted. I say, oh, no way. Really? You did? And then I'll notice their license plate is from a different state. And I'll say, well, I just noticed your license plate. Are you up here permanently in our state? Or is it, just temporarily? And then they'll tell me that they're here to check on their family or just up here for a couple weeks or whatever. And you just get in this conversation. I would then get in, we would say goodbye, and then I would get in my car and my kids would always say, Dad, do you know them? And I would say, I know everybody, right? It was just a fun little game that I played. But really what I was trying to do was just assert myself in the world. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Hey, be courageous, be bold, be audacious, and be confident to just talk to a stranger. And the best thing you can do is get them to talk about themselves. So you're going to ask a lot of questions and follow-up questions and follow-up questions. And then step number 4 is you're going to resist the temptation to talk about yourself. That's the struggle, is people start talking about themselves and you start losing rapport. So the idea is you're going to ask questions and they're going to answer, and you're going to ask a question based on what they answered. And you're going to do this 3 or 4 times. And then maybe they'll ask you something. Of course, you're going to respond. You're not going to ignore it. You're going to respond, but you're going to keep your response short and then ask them a follow-up question. So you're always thinking about, what else can I learn from this person? What else? Not that you're trying to dig deep into their world, but what are some general questions that I can ask them? Because people's favorite subject is themselves. They know their world, their own world, the best. If you can get them talking about their own world, you're going to get in rapport a lot faster. Okay? And then limit how much you share. If you go long-winded and start sharing a lot about yourself and you're not a good listener anymore, I tell you what, you will break rapport with them. So the sign of a good conversationalist is to ask questions 20% of the time and listen 80% of the time. Keep that in mind. All right, now step number 5 is, I want you to go out this week. A strategy I want you to do is I want you just to go to a stranger and start talking to them. What are you going to do? You're not going to share anything about yourself. You're just going to go up to them and say hello. And then you're going to say, like if you're at a grocery store, hello, how are you? And they're going to say, good, how are you? And then you're going to say, I noticed you were choosing one of these cheeses in the cheese rack. Is there a reason why you chose this one that's in your cart? What's special about that cheese? What do you use it for? And you can get in a conversation that way. And maybe they have kids and you can point out how cute their kids are. And then you can go back to whatever you were doing, buying your cheese or whatever, right? And it's just, all I want you to do is practice talking to strangers. As you do that in different scenarios, like in elevators, that's always a tough one. As you do that, right? Because nobody speaks up in elevators. I try to do it all the time. If I'm at the airport and I'm in an elevator going up from the garage or something, I'll be like, hey, where are you guys headed? And they'll tell me, and I say, oh, that sounds amazing. Have you ever been there before? And you get in this conversation, the door opens, you guys leave, you say, hello, have a good day. Everybody was happy. All I want you to do is create those moments with people. In so doing, your confidence will grow, recognizing that the reason they're not doing it to you is because they don't have the confidence. They have the social anxiety, or they don't think it's their right to talk to people. I'm telling you, we at Greatness Within Community, we lean into talking to people and making a difference in people's lives. So I would encourage you to do the same. And then the last one, number 6, is leave something on the table. Don't let a conversation end starkly, where that person has to leave or they start getting fidgety and looking at their watch and so forth. Those are bad signs. Once the conversation starts to, you go over that crest a little bit, if you want to maintain rapport with that person, end the conversation comfortably but quickly. You don't need to carry on to the very end. Leave something on the table. If you want to stay in rapport with that person or you want to meet that person again, hey, have a little short conversation and then say, hey, I got to use the restroom, or I got to go visit with so-and-so, or I've got to run to the store real quick. I'll be back out. We can talk tomorrow. We can talk another time, whatever. Leaving something on the table makes you more attractive. I would tell that when my boys and girls were dating. When you leave something on the table instead of exhaust all the energy, that other person wants you more. Okay, so just a side note on that, okay? And I learned it when I dated my wife and married her. Okay, I'll tell that story another time. All right, I hope these 6 principles will make a difference in your life, but the key is you got to go out and practice. You step into the fear and the fear will dissipate. All right, I wish you the best. Now go out there and unleash your greatness within. Hey there, what'd you think? I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. You know, it's my pleasure to share these insights and distinctions that will lead to more happiness, fulfillment, and achievement in life. So, hey, if you like the message, if you like the podcast episode, hey, do me a favor. Would you give me a thumbs up? Would you give me a star rating? I'd really appreciate it. Better yet, if you wouldn't mind writing a little review wherever you're listening to this from, that would be really great. I'd appreciate it. All right, now go out there and unleash your greatness within.